Doomsday Mom. Lori Vallow has a lot going on this week, and she's in her environment, an environment where she likes to manipulate and lie, try to convince people of who she really is. This serial killer mom that killed her own 2 kids. Let's talk about who she is and what's going on. Lori Vallow is heading to yet another trial after being convicted and accused of killing her 2 children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, and her lover's wife, Tammy Daybell. Lori Vallow today is in an Arizona jail awaiting her next trial, where she is accused of conspiring to kill her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. She is also accused of conspiring to kill her nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux. They believe that her brother, Alex Cox, most likely was the person that was executing all victims in this case, but he's no longer here on Earth. They believe that Lori was manipulating, along with Chad Daybell, her brother, to carry out these horrific acts. In a recent interview with Keith Morrison on Dateline, she called a lot of the facts that he brought up rumors and claimed that she was the only one that had the truth to the story. Before we go much further, let's talk about who I found Lori to be. Lori is obsessed with speaking to spirits in heaven, finding cryptic messages in biblical documents, being admired, favored, special, leading, selling, and supplying an agenda, lying some more, convincing and manipulating, hurting others who are obstacles in her life and planning their end, hateful and misleading. Her personal presentation is important. That includes her hair and her appearance. Being a role model to families, religious events, religious groups. Be quite honest, any activity she is involved in. Obsessed with getting people to see her ideas as their own, pushing others to act out or carry out certain ideas or plans. Expects others to envy her. She doesn't seem to have ever had the concept of obligation, responsibility, or reality. She is sneaky, vindictive, shallow, and untrustworthy. Thus far in my research, she has shown zero bonds with any one person in her life. She sees people as a way to gain. She loves to put on a show and be the center of attention. She'll use people's love for her as a way to control them. She can cut someone off and never think twice about it unless she needs something from them. She believes that she is everyone's blessing. She can pretend to be a team player until her impulsive side ruins it for her. So in a Dateline interview, Lori mentions someone knowing about her and how it's impossible if you've never met them or know them personally. But this is similar to her support of gifts, ranking people, which kind of gives me a hint that maybe she doesn't believe in all this mumbo jumbo. It's just a manipulation tactic. Lori can believe in Satan, spirits and angels coming to visit her, people leaving their bodies and being replaced with demons. But she doesn't understand how someone researching her can know her or do a story on her. Now, we also learned, which we already knew this, that Lori was never an aggressive mother towards her children, to their face at least. She didn't yell at them or spank them. She had told Keith, in fact, that she loved to show them love and build them up, teach them logic. And these are all instructions that she learned from heaven. So this is another clue that she was getting heavenly advice for raising her children, which had to been before Chad Daybell. Sadly, her actions didn't reflect love and logic. It was a way to make people believe that she was a great mother. It was a show, a manipulation, and to control how people see her and not what her reality is. In fact, she had convinced her family of what a great mother she was. Now we suspect, because of her intense hate for Joe Ryan, Lori Vallow's third husband, that she perhaps despised Tylee. And we know that she was trying to make Joe Ryan get life insurance, and perhaps Tylee could have been a meal ticket for Lori. Anyone that is close to Lori knows the story of Joe Ryan, which seems to be a way to get attention for Lori. Then J.J. Vallow might have been a heroic story, another way to paint herself as a selfless and loving person. You got to remember, around that time JJ was being adopted, that was kind of a popular thing. Again, Lori tried to be a good mom for show, it seemed for me, purposes for her interests, and showing the people around them that they're the best family on the block. Now, this part that's my opinion on who Lori is. And what it seems to be is that after her interest of being this great mom and being this show family, that changed when her interests changed. Lori's oldest son, Colby Ryan, Lori seemed to have a connection with him. They goofed off together, and they were quite bonded until he hit his teen years. He grew interested in college, girls, and finding his own way. At some time in his early adulthood, he started having a little bit of trouble connecting to his mother. So this would interfere with Lori's ability to paint his pictures and pass. Anyone married into the Cox family and later escaped claimed that the Cox family were crazy. So Colby also dealt with the drama surrounding this family and was always a support system for his mom, Lori, when she needed it most. Lori would concoct a story, convincingly lead her son and other family members to believe her take or ideas of what was happening around her. So she wanted to control that truth, and she never wanted to look wrong or bad. So my research shows that she does not want to be painted in any kind of dark or sinful way. However, Lori did trust her son Colby enough to share her spiritual experiences with Jesus, Satan, and her past lives. During this time in Colby's life, nothing seemed odd. This is just the way his life has always been and the way that he knew it. Now, it's true. Both Colby and Tylee were not afraid to stand up to their mom. Lori many times had to be lectured by her own children. Her children seemed to be very outspoken about her choices in life, especially the men in her life and her friends. Now, many people say Lori never showed aggression in front of them, but there are people in her life that come into her life later. They witness a very scary side to Lori that they never seen before. People were starting to get the idea that maybe this isn't the woman you want to cross. It's true. Lori might be argumentative, but she didn't like confrontation, and she really didn't like to carry out attacks. Why would she when she can have other people do it for her? Okay, so I could go all day talking about this, but we're going to have to cut it here. So if you're new to watching this, you got an idea of my research on Lori of who she is. Something else most of us have learned, in my opinion, is this. She's a very vindictive woman who will go out of her way to make someone's life miserable once they are marked on her list. And we're going to talk about her list of witnesses. What could it mean? Well, there's several reasons Lori could be having witnesses on her list. We're going to start with Nate Eaton. Right now, there appears to be around 10 to 11 witnesses that she's targeting. The very first name on this list is Nate Eaton of East Idaho News, a reporter on this case. Nate Eaton had been targeted during trials in Idaho, and they wanted him to be a witness, but East Idaho News seemed to have helped Nate Eaton fight that first subpoena, because especially many people knew the reasoning most likely for this, allegedly, is this was just an attempt to keep Nate Eaton out of the courtroom and from reporting the story. Nate Eaton and Justin Lum and Adam Herbert, hope I said that right, were one of the first reporters to really jump on this story and start rocking and rolling with all that crazy information. But for some reason, Lori was targeting in on Nate Eaton of East Idaho News. Everyone knows that Nate Eaton had nothing to do with Charles Vallow's case because he wasn't even around during that time. For many of us, we are guessing and suspecting a reason for Nate Eaton being a witness is to be vindictive towards Nate Eaton, since he was one of the top reporters covering this case. The one thing, a lot of the court systems and attorneys try to avoid doing, is it's a big no-no, is bringing a reporter in as a witness. Could this affect Nate Eaton's reporting on the case or attending trial and reporting on the trial? We'll cover more on that later. Right now, let's kind of jump to some of the coverage in court where Lori is defending herself as her own defense attorney. In court, she was sarcastic, cocky, demanding, and might I say, clueless. In one instance, she brought attention to the fact that on May 11th, if they don't start the second trial with Brandon Boudreaux, in order for her rights to not be violated, it must start on this date or by that date. Now, Lori really thought she was pulling a fast one on the court that day. It seems she thought that she put him in a predicament that he wouldn't be able to get out of or would leave him in a bind. It's important to know that state and judge are being as respectful as possible to her. It's obvious she's just trying to be a victim and prove somebody wrong in order to get her way as usual. It is the job of defense to find mistakes, but do it professionally. And that's not how she does it.
An interesting comeback. So here's what happened with that. Your Honor, I'd like to remind the court that the last day is May 11th. Oh yeah, there's that rule.
Well, I'll probably exclude some time based on the fact that you can't do two trials at once.
The state could combine the trials and do two trials at once, but they don't want to do two trials at once, so it really violates my speedy trial rights if they do not give me a speedy trial by May 11th for both cases. Not to mention that they did combine all the discovery into one case. They didn't give me two different separate discoveries for two different cases, which would be much more convenient considering the voluminous amount of discovery that they piled onto us.
Does the state want to combine both cases?
Your Honor, if the court gave us a little time to work it out and the defendant wants to join them, I mean, obviously,
I don't know that
a normal defense attorney, and I don't mean that in any way, normally they would be
pausing there. You can hear Lori chime in her thoughts. Again, a victim saying that the state's being derogatory. This gives you a clue of how Lori treats people in her life that she don't get along with or don't agree with. Basically telling the state that they're being insulting or disrespectful to her. And she was trying to, the state was trying her best to be respectful and tell her she don't know what she's talking about. And if you want to ruin your life anymore, we can do that.
A normal defense attorney, and I don't mean that in any way, normally they would be severed.
Severed because you don't want one jury to know about the other.
Correct.
Two separate charges and have a harmful rub-off effect of the evidence in one case affecting the evidence in another case.
Correct, Your Honor. That's why they were filed separately. But if the defendant wants them together, the state would have to request this be pushed back slightly so that we could then get all the witnesses for that trial together. since they were not subpoenaed for this trial. But if that's what the defendant wants to join them, and she understands that prejudice, and that she's then going to be waiving that prejudice with that, then the state is certainly willing to do that. But we would then have to request to have that trial, or this trial date, moved back to allow us to get the other witnesses lined up.
Sorry ass DJ.
Very long pause here because she knows she put herself in a bad situation. I should probably play some music here.
That was not, that's not what I was saying, to combine them. I'm just saying, give me my second trial by May 11th. So the court can figure that out.
All right, well,
Lori's snarky remark is the court can figure that out. That's not her problem. Can you imagine being the state prosecutor sitting there listening to this woman convicted of killing her own children be so disrespectful in court and then try to turn the tables on them? While this might have worked in her life around her family and friends, this will not work in court, and this will test their patience to the max. There's quite a few issues that, this court was having to cover with her defending herself and then trying to be kind of disrespectful at the same time. Now, originally, according to Nate Eaton anyways, I guess the trial was only supposed to take 2 to 3 weeks. But since Lori Vallow has dropped her attorney, her defense team, and is representing herself, she will, they're expecting it to go weeks over the initial time they expected this trial to run. So Lori has this group of witnesses, mostly made up of her family and a few close friends and a couple of names I did not recognize. So what are the reasons for these witnesses? I'm sure there's multiple. Charles had been dealing with Lori Vallow a really long time with her delusions, is what they call it in quotes. Her accusations that he was a zombie. But Charles was trying to get her help. He wanted to get her the mental help, but I think he waited too long to where I think he knew she had mental problems, because when he came into the picture, she was having problems with Joe Ryan. And I think he just overlooked that until she turned on him. So Charles was trying to get her help right before he was shot. And he would call Lori's family, sometimes giving them confusing information, begging for her to come back as long as, if she'll just talk to him and he'll stop the divorce proceedings, etc. and so on. What they don't tell you is Lori is talking to Charles and telling her, unless you stop the divorce proceedings, I'm not coming here. It is a fact that Lori's family members have been known to lie for her. Whether they know they're lying or not, I'm not certain, but they certainly do. They don't research anything. They just take Lori's word for it. Some of those family members are Janice Cox, Lori Vallow's mother, Barry Cox, her father, Summer Shiflett, her sister, and Adam Cox, her brother. Maybe we should mention Zach, her nephew, which is the son of Adam Cox. Zach actually had the opportunity to see Lori's changes gas up. He knew Charles' concerns and how he was kind of wishy-washy with taking care of it. As long as she's cooking for JJ, don't worry about it. And then other times when she would go on her crazy, jerking all kinds of money out of the bank, taking off and leaving and abandoning the family. Well, Charles' values would then change. At some point during all this, Charles does decide to try to get a few families to help him get Lori help, set up an intervention. Allegedly, during this intervention, them attempting to set up to get Lori some help, family members are telling Lori about all these plans, giving her a heads up. A lot of them are suspecting it's Summer Shiflett and Janice Cox. Summer has a history of giving her sister a heads up, including she would tell her sister in jail that Chad Daybell was throwing her under the bus. And this is after she found out the kids were gone. They had made plans for Charles Vallow to take J.J. Vallow to school. But that's not how that day would go. It seems Lori had plans to somehow get a hold of Charles Vallow's phone and read what his plans were. At some point during this time that Charles is at her home, that he rented for her, with the kids still there and Alex Cox, he is shot twice by Alex Cox. At least that's what he claims. Lori and the kids take off and go for a joyride to Burger King, pick up some flip-flops, and then she drops JJ off at school. Then they return back to the home many minutes later, where she is seen speaking with police and brushing it off as it was just an everyday incident, just a little fight. Absolutely had no remorse or anything, knowing that they had killed Charles, in which they claim was self-defense. Family members were on her side, and they were speaking up for Lori, telling them that Charles had been causing Lori problems. At the time, there was only one person on Charles' side, and that was his sister, Kay Woodcock. Investigators would have to screen, collect text, documents, information to find out what the truth was, because there was a lot of people in Lori's family claiming that Charles was the aggressor. Adam Cox really don't come out and stand up for Charles until a bit later. And there was always some missing pieces in that timeline of the family members that day that Charles was shot. And I guess that'll come out in court. It is said that Melanie Gibb was staying there at the time, and Lori sent her away, asked Melanie to stick around, and asked Alex Cox to cancel a trip. Here's Nate Eaton's little timeline he put together.
Charles texted Lori, and then police say that his device was here at the house at 7:50. So 17 minutes later, his device was here at the house. And then for nearly 40 minutes, the device left the home. It was not here. And I'm going to take you kind of on a drive to show you the movements, according to police, that Lori Vallow went on with Charles Vallow's device, allegedly that morning, where that device ended up before it ended up back here at the house. Now, at 7:52 that morning, there was a voice call between Alex and Lori. We don't know what was discussed during that call. It seemed to be relatively short because Lori stopped at a fast food restaurant. 2 minutes after that phone call, Lori went through the drive-thru here at this Burger King around 7:54 a.m. Charles's device was pinged here at the restaurant around 7:55 a.m. So they were here for just a few minutes. Lori ordered some chicken nuggets, some chicken fries, according to a receipt that we have, some Sprite, and a bottle of water. Think about it. While she's here getting that food back at the house, about 5-6 minutes away, according to my driving records, Charles was dying, and Alex was there with him. Lori was here with Tylee and JJ, and then they left the fast food restaurant and did one more stop before taking JJ to school. Charles's device arrived at Walgreens at 8:16 in the morning. Surveillance footage captured Lori purchasing a pair of flip-flops. She was here for about 4 minutes She then left the Walgreens around 8:20 in the morning. Charles's device arrives here at JJ's school at 8:32. 4 minutes later, at 8:36, that's when Alex Cox, back at the house, calls 911 to report that he has shot his brother-in-law.
I'm in police and an ambulance. What's the emergency there? I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
In fact, that's one of the things that Lori is using as her defense is self-defense. Also, she's saying that the states, well, they don't have enough evidence to prosecute her for this case. Then you have third-party fault, which means that she's going to probably blame media or something else for probably Nate Eaton for what people believe. Perhaps ethical guidelines. We don't know what she's really doing. I'm just guessing, guys. This is my guessing. Or possibly even Kay Woodcock with the insurance. Lori has stated on Dateline recently that she felt that media had ruined or tarnished her reputation by spreading lies. And she's setting up for a defamation lawsuit. That's interesting. Another possibility is holding this party culpability as admissible in court if it can raise reasonable doubt about the defendant's guilt. In order for such evidence to be admitted, it must be relevant and not unduly prejudicial. So another theory, and this could be a big thing, is where she is pointing at someone else as the perpetrator of the crime. And this is where lack of law gets me, guys. I just really can't even, there's so many possibilities. If your attorney, go over this stuff, please. Some mere presence, it looks like in a murder trial, mere presence at the scene of the crime, even with knowledge of the crime, is generally insufficient to prove guilt unless there's evidence of participation or aiding and abetting, whoever's responsible. And I guess procedural, I don't know if she's trying to say maybe the state hasn't turned over all the evidence, and Lori wants to be her own witness at her own trial.
Notices the following witnesses. 1, the defendant. Sounds like Lori wants to be a witness in her own trial. 2, any and all individuals, including but not limited to victim assistance caseworkers and or volunteers who have spoken with any witness in this case. Heads up. That's a lot of people, but she doesn't list them. All witness listed in the state's Rule 15.1 disclosure, as well as in any supplemental witness disclosure filing. Also, the custodian of records for any and all exhibits. And then me, Nate Eaton. Lycia Ituahua, I'm so sorry, Lycia, if you're watching and I said your name wrong. She is Lori Vallow's, or Tylee's, one of her really good friends. Gabrielle Bonilla, I don't know who that is. Joseph Ponskratz, I don't know who that is. Ashlyn Rind, she took the stand in the trial in Idaho. That was Tylee's best friend. Barry Cox, Lori's father. Zach Cox, Charles's son. Adam Cox, her brother. Janice Cox, her mom. Summer Shiflett, by the way, her last name is Shiflett, not Shiflett, her sister, and Brandon Boudreau. The defense notices the following documents, photographs, and other tangible objects that the defense intends to use at trial. Any item disclosed by the state, insufficiency of state's evidence.
Where's Melanie Gibb? Where's Melanie Boudreau? I guess there's going to be a lot of information missing out of this trial. Majority of her witnesses are people that she trusts most in her life, at least did at one time, and ones that have lied and manipulated knowingly or unknowingly, we don't know, for Lori in the past. Guys, there's so much I could talk about with this, but I'm going to have to end it right here, and we'll do a part 2. And we're going to talk about some of those witnesses, especially her sister, Summer Shiflett. Also, Joe is the guy that was renting Lori and Charles the house. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.